Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the first in our community engagement event series. We will get started in just a second here. So welcome, everybody. We are offering ASL interpretation and Spanish language interpretation for this meeting. To turn on your Spanish interpretation, you should be able to see in just a moment here, you should be able to have the option to turn on interpretation. It's shaped like a globe at the bottom of the screen. And the instructions for the ASL interpretation are in the chat. So all of our participants, if you could please drop your name and school affiliation in the chat just to introduce yourselves. As a matter of practice, throughout the panel, throughout the presentation, questions will be going in the chat. And then once we come to the Q&A portion at the end, which will be about the last 20 minutes or so, we will be pulling the questions from the chat in the order that they came in. As a reminder to everybody who's on, this hour is the staff community conversation session. So if you are not a member of the Austin ISD team, your session will start in an hour at 5:30. And the information for that is in the chat as well. The Zoom link for that is in the chat. And this recording will be uploaded at a later date if anybody you know wanted to make it and couldn't make it. And we're going to go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Gabriella Becker. I'm a community engagement coordinator with Austin ISD, and I'm going to turn it over to our leadership team to start introducing themselves.
Well, good afternoon, early evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Elizalde, and I am certainly humbled and honored to be the proud superintendent of Austin Independent School District. And with that, I think I'll just turn it over to our team one at a time and have them each introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. Elizabeth Casas, Chief Academic Officer. Happy to be here with you tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I am Anthony Mays, Chief of Schools. Happy to be here to have this conversation this evening.
Evening, Stephanie Hawley, Equity Officer at Good Evening.
Good evening, Sean Brinkman, Chief Technology Officer. Thank you for listening in this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Ashley Gonzalez, proud Chief of Police of the District Police Department. Excited to be here and listening and learning.
Leslie Stevens, Chief of Human Capital. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Hello, my name is Jacob Reach. I'm the Chief Officer for Intergovernmental Relations and Board Services, and I'm very excited to be here with our Crockett and Travis staff today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matthias Segura, and I am the Acting Chief Operations Officer. Really looking forward to our conversation this evening.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Wallace, Executive Director of the Office of Innovation and Development for AISD, and also serve as the ED of the Austin Ed Fund. And great to be here.
All right, so it looks like that's going to bring us to our panel. So the first question is, being new to the district, what are some of the ways that you sought to learn from Austin ISD team members? And can you give some examples about how what you've heard has informed your priorities and decision making? And we're going to go ahead and get started with Dr. Elizalde for this one.
Thank you so much. You know, I think it was rather ironic as I did my learning tour, which I would have to say was a little different than normal. Being a new superintendent in a district, I would have been able to interact face-to-face with people, but I did utilize Zoom in order to connect with folks. Of course, it was different, but I was able to get to a lot of people in a short period of time because it did save me travel time. One of the most interesting things is that in my own philosophy around education and what I wish to impart to our students and our community so aligns with what I heard from our community. So actually, if you would put that other slide back up, I'd love to be able to kind of reference a few things. You know, equity being at the center of that particular, and the English teachers are going to correct me, but I'm going to call it kind of like a multi-dimensional Venn diagram. I am not an English background person, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm the math science person. So the equity being in the center of our conversations is like really a key component of just my own belief system, that equity and excellence for each and every student should be just a cornerstone of the work that we do. In addition to that, the fact that part of my system also includes that the teacher is the program, because at the end of the day, we know where instructional academic achievement occurs, and that's in the classroom setting. Now, not always in a classroom setting. It could be outdoor learning. It could be on a field trip. There's such a variety of ways in which you all lead and engage students, but it is in the guidance of the teacher, which connects with the fact that one of our strategic focus areas that the board undertook was teacher and employee well-being. And to that end, I'd also like to actually invite us to begin thinking of every single one of us as a teacher. All of us are teachers, whether we're the principal, whether we're the assistant principal, whether we're the cafeteria serving or the cafeteria, the food preparers, we're all teachers. And so I just really think about teaching. And as we know, our students come from their first teachers, their parents. So as I listened, I heard a dedication to wanting to maintain the excellence that is already here in our district, plus a desire to expand that excellence to include all different backgrounds and all different communities. And so I really feel excited to be a part of that process. I heard so much from members of the community, both internal and external, just about how important it is that we continue to recognize that equity should be the entrance rather than the exit part of our processes.
Great, thank you, Dr. Elizalde. Dr. Hawley, would you like to briefly speak to the newly started Equity Advisory Committee?
Absolutely, and you can put the slide back up. The first thing I'd like to say is I'm very excited about the opportunity to actually facilitate the Equity Advisory Committee, but I want to give kudos to Dr. Elizalde because this office, the Office of Equity is many of you may know or may not know that it's a growing office, but Dr. Elizalde really came in and latched on to the idea that community is important. And so when this idea of this committee was proposed, she was really in favor of it. And it was organized to strengthen our connection with the community. And as we pursue equitable outcomes, and it's an opportunity for the community and internal and external folks to tell us what we're doing well and then to make recommendations. And you can see on this particular slide that we have community and district co-chairs. We have 4 co-chairs, 2 from the district, 2 from the community. We have students, staff, we have caregivers, teachers, administrators. And we just met for the first time last week. We have 6 subcommittees. And if you look over to the right, one of the subcommittees is dedicated to community building with the committee. And so we want to make sure this is not just a regular old advisory committee, but is a committee that grows in community. And so we have a subcommittee dedicated to making sure that we grow and develop relationships as well as education. So every meeting will be an opportunity for us to learn something and get shared language. 4 of the committees are dedicated to the district, to the board's 4 priority areas. And you see those: student well-being, teacher and employee well-being, culture of respect, and financial stewardship and prioritization. And so we have subcommittees that will begin to meet hopefully over the next few weeks. And then we have 1 subcommittee dedicated to our primary focus this year, which is to identify the areas of focus for an equity assessment, and then identify a process for finding the assessors and the vendors who can do that work. And our next meeting is April 27th at 5:30 to 7:30, and everybody's welcome, and we hope you'll join us there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hawley. So moving into this next question, the board had just adopted the strategic plan framework before the change in leadership this past summer. And the next step in the process is for the administration to develop strategies and an action plan. Could you all provide us with an update on where we're at in that process, starting with Michelle Wallace? Can you provide us a little bit of background on the development of the strategic framework?
Definitely. Thank you. Michelle Wallace, again, Executive Director of the Office of Innovation and Development. And yeah, the board has been working on this strategic framework for quite a while, approved it last year, and it includes the mission, vision, values, and priority focus areas. And it was very important to the board that equity be a foundational component of the plan and not another area kind of aligned with the others. That was a key decision that the board made in developing the framework. Our mission under this strategic plan is to prepare every student with the knowledge and skills to thrive in college, career, and life. And our vision: we are Austin's home for inclusive learning, high expectations for all children, high outcomes for every student. It's important to say those words and that they're not just another plan on the shelf. So I wanted to read them for the group today too. Dr. Hawley outlined our focus areas: student well-being and achievement, teacher and employee well-being, culture of respect and customer service, and fiscal stewardship and prioritization. So that was the board's work that was approved last year. They also approved a revised scorecard that's aligned with this framework, and that's how we'll measure our progress against these priority focus areas. And now the administration is doing work to develop strategies and action steps to address the priority focus areas. Those strategies are in development by Dr. Elizalde's leadership team. We also had a focus group last summer, about the strategies, right actually during the superintendent transition. And so we went back and gathered that feedback as we've been working on the strategies, in addition to feedback from the Equity Office, as they have been doing significant amounts of community engagement over the last year, making sure that the feedback that Dr. Hawley and her team have received is really embedded in the work around the strategies for the strategic plan.
Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Elizalde, do you have anything to add about where we're at in the process of developing that district improvement plan?
Just very briefly, Stephanie Elizalde. Just a reminder that this slide does illustrate the connectivity between our board's strategic framework work, our actual scorecard, which we really all want everyone to begin to actualize that this is our district scorecard. It's everybody's work. This doesn't belong to the superintendent. It's not one person. This is a community of work. And all of that information of where we wish to be and where we will work to be will be described in our district improvement plan or a strategic action plan, all synonyms, but ultimately there will be an alignment between our equity action plan and our district improvement plan. One is the method by which we're utilizing to improve the other. And so as Dr. Hawley and her team continue to get feedback, this particular slide, I think, is important to recognize that for us to realize the dreams for our students will require community engagement, both internal and external stakeholders, and ultimately represents what I think is a very important foundation of community and district work, which is people support what they help to create.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to a couple members of the leadership team to talk about specific priority areas or strategies that we are going to focus on at the moment, starting with Ms. Elizabeth Casas to talk a little bit about dual language and special education.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us tonight. So real briefly, two of the strategies that we are putting in place to support our emergent bilingual and special education students has to be the development of the programs to really serve students so that we can make sure that our student outcomes are aligned with the goals that we set on the scorecard, and that the actions are aligned to support implementation at the campus level. Here you see the research from Thomas and Collier on the different emergent bilingual programs and the longitudinal data to support the different types of models. And here in Austin, we're lucky enough to have a dual language model. You see the top two strands in red, dual language one way and two way. So we want to really focus our efforts in making sure the schools are staffed appropriately to be able to implement dual language models, and that we have the resources and support. And then secondly, for our special education students, really designing what do services look like at the campus level. And so I do, for campus staff, say thank you for your patience as we're building the leadership team on the special ed department. And so more information will be forthcoming.
Thank you so much. Briefly going to turn it over to Dr. Jacob Reach to talk a little bit about enrollment.
Yeah, thank you. I am excited to talk about another priority area we have, which is looking at enrollment in the district. So we do know that over the past couple of years, our enrollment has seen some declines. During the 1920 school year, we actually saw a small bump in enrollment, which we really attributed to our schools increasing their outreach out to families, bringing families into AISD. Of course, as everyone knows, this year, we did see a rather larger decline in enrollment due to COVID. So we really want to prioritize our effort to reconnect with those families, especially those families at our pre-K and K level where we saw some of the largest declines. So we are working, or I should start with saying that over the summer, our parent support specialists, along with many of our other staff, did make phone calls to over 2,000 of our families who we expected to see, but for one reason or another were not enrolled in our school, to talk with them about remote learning and what we have to offer. We want to continue that great work, and on April 10th, well, starting before then, but on April 10th, we'll be doing part of our Operation Reconnect campaign, where we're going to go door to door to actually speak with families who were with us last year, but for one reason or another were not enrolled this year, or we expected them to be enrolled this year, but they were not, to better understand why they may not have returned and what we can do to connect with them. We're also looking at developing an enrollment office that will be charged with informing our families about the experiences at all of our different schools, such as our P-TECH programs at our Crockett and Travis schools, and of course, all of our middle and elementary. And also helping them with registration and outreach to draw families back into our schools. So we're excited for this enrollment office to be starting for next school year.
Thank you. And last, I will turn it over to Mr. Sean Brinkman to talk a little bit about some of our priorities around Wi-Fi and tech access and other systems that we've put into place to make our district run super efficiently and super advanced.
Thank you for that, Sean Brinkman, CTO. Yeah, one of the things that we're going to continue to work on is...
I'm sorry, can we switch interpreters at this time? Go and switch to interpreter 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things we'll continue to work on is access for students and really shifting our approach from a hotspot bus Wi-Fi initiative to a long-range solution and really trying to expand our district network out into the community and ultimately to the students' home so that they have access to high-speed wireless internet anywhere in our city, really is the dream. We're also going to be modernizing some of our business systems, in particular our finance and HR systems. This should really help the district improve some efficiencies in our business systems, not only around campuses and central level departments being able to manage and maintain a budget, but also helping us identify appropriate candidates, getting them into teaching positions quicker, as well as helping them grow throughout their professional career. And then finally, one other thing that we're looking at is our tools for teachers. We rolled out a ton of instructional tools this last year. We're looking at specifically tools around analyzing student data and some systems to bring in where you can look at the individual student, multiple assessments across several years, so you can get a real picture of how that student's performing at any given point in time in the system. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So next, I'd like to take a moment to talk about some of the things that we've accomplished so far since this summer and what we can expect next. So I will again be turning it over to Ms. Elizabeth Casas to talk a little bit about accomplishments in early literacy and in our curriculum.
One of the big accomplishments is our health services has done a wonderful job in securing vaccines and rolling those out for our teachers and staff. So kudos to Lexi Copeland and those efforts. The things that you can expect is a coherent instructional framework. We're working really closely with Dr. Mays and his team on really defining what does quality instruction look like in the classroom and how do we create those systems of support on our end to have a rigorous, coherent curriculum, and that we develop the learning associated with the new teaching for this new age of digital learning. We're also focused on the early literacy plans and making sure that our littlest ones get the services that they need early on so that we can make sure that our students are on grade level by 3rd grade. And the third thing is the curriculum. So we are looking at this year, it rolled out fairly quickly to really revise and make it rigorous and coherent and aligned to the standards so that the teachers have the tools of what they need to teach so that we can focus on how to teach next year so we can make sure that all of our students are high performing.
Thank you so much. I would like to turn it over now to Chief Ashley Gonzalez, our police chief, to talk a little bit about what the police, Austin ISD Police is working on right now, especially in regards to racial bias training, mental health response, and other excellent initiatives that they've got going on over there.
So thank you so much. And we recognize that we're a small part of the district and that we should be assisting and supporting our students in our district. And as such, we're often respond to calls for assistance, and our focus now is to kind of assist the student, de-escalate the situation, recognize that not every call an officer has to be involved, but sometimes we're the first ones to arrive on scene. So having the tools to focus on de-escalating and turning over the situation to staff or counselors it's a priority for us. So with that in mind, we had folks start training and continuing our training. As school-based law enforcement, our officers receive a certain amount of hours of training to be certified as mental health officers, and we continue to do that. A couple of months ago, we hosted a racial intelligence training and engagement class for the entire department and the dispatchers. And that training we focused on emotional intelligence, social intelligence, bias-free policing in the workplace or with the community. It kind of reinforces, treating everyone with dignity, fairly, in a professional manner, with strict accountability. We have updated our policies and we've begun as a part of our commitment to transparency to post some of those reports online for the public to see.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And next, I will turn it over to Mr. Matias Segura to talk a little bit about facilities and COVID readiness and storm response.
Thank you very much. What a year as far as accomplishments go. Very excited and really proud of all the work that was done around COVID readiness. Certainly PPE distribution, health and safety protocols, really working with all of our campus leaders to make sure that our campuses were as safe as possible to welcome students, really to make sure that staff understood how to work in this unique environment. Certainly the storm response effort, what happened several weeks ago has never occurred before in the city of Austin, and very proud of the organization's ability to pivot and support our community in a way that it never really has in the past, including development of warming shelters, homeless shelters, shelters for families to stay overnight and get protection from the severe weather. Additionally, food and water distribution sites. We were able to work closely with our campuses and get many of those up and running. So certainly very proud of all that work. One of the things that's also been going on is the continued work and implementation of the 2017 bond program, making sure that our facilities are warm, safe, and dry, but also support all the wonderful programming and education that occurs within them. So it's our commitment to continue to do that, and we'll be doing that moving forward. As far as what's next, certainly delivering on all those commitments to our community and to the voters of Austin, but also thinking about emergency planning, long-term planning, and really ensuring alignment with academics and school leadership. Our goal is going to always be to support our students and staff, and we're going to be thinking about creative ways to do that for here and the foreseeable future.
Thank you so much. So next, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, the budget. So we know that obviously we're going to be facing some budgetary challenges considering the expenses associated with COVID-19 and other unpredictable expenses we've had over the last year. I'm going to turn it over real quickly to Ms. Leslie Stevens to talk about whether or not that will have any effect on staffing and what next year will look like in that respect.
Good evening. Yes, I am Leslie Stevens in Human Capital. And one of the things we looked at, and I started in January, but one of the things we looked at were the previous year's staffing formulas. And we knew that we were facing a decrease in student enrollment. So currently we're staffed in the district for 80,000 plus students, and we currently have 75,000 students. Our goal next year is to have 77,351, which is a reduction from the current 80,000. So we started looking at the staffing formulas to do a strategic staffing formula and make some changes. If we would not have made any changes and left the staffing formulas as they were, we'd have had a reduction in about 622 positions. So we would have been at the point where we would have lost a little over 600 employees from this school year to next school year. So also walking in, we knew that being equitable across our campuses was very important. And so we tried to look at staffing formulas through the lens of providing some equitable resources. We know that teachers are our greatest resource in our district. And so how do we look at it so that we have our greatest resource where our students need it the most? So in doing that, we did modify staffing formulas. And as a total, we've got about a 220 employee reduction at the campus level of employees. However, there will be no employee that will lose their job. So what we do is any employee who is reduced off of one campus, we'll put them in a priority pool. And then as vacancies open up or as positions open up on other campuses, they may go to another campus, or, if there's a position that opens on their their former campus that they have the certification for, they will go back even to their home campus. So we know that, you know, there's that movement that happens. It happens every school year, but we do know that no employee is going to lose their job. Most of these can be absorbed through attrition. On average, we hire between 600 and 700 new employees every school year. We are going to be flexible in our placement, and we are also looking at, just so that campuses aren't the only ones saying, you know, it's only at the campus level, we are also doing reorganizations in departments, and that will also result in a reduction at central office. And I know you heard Mr. Brinkman earlier talk about the system that we're going to put in place in finance and human resources. And eventually, once we get that system implemented, we will be more efficient with staff in those areas as well. So just to reiterate, we do have a slight reduction on some campuses, increases in other campuses, because we put our resources where the students are going to be or where we project them to be. But no employee will lose their job as a result of this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stevens. Next, I will turn it over to Dr. Anthony Mays to talk a little bit about how instruction drives our budgetary decisions.
Thank you, and thank you to the community for being present this evening. And so, instruction is what drives, you know, those decisions that Ms. Stevens just discussed. And so, as campus leaders sit at the campus level, they work to look through their data to figure out, you know, where are some of the challenging areas, or what are some of the programs that we want to strengthen. And they do that through their needs assessment. They do that through combing through their data before they make any type of budgetary decision. There's a system that we have in place in addition to myself and executive directors that support principals directly. There's a lot of eyes that are on that data. There's a lot of conversations that take place around that data. And so we have PTAs, we have campus advisory committees that also are part of that conversation, just to be able to get that community input. But as you have those conversations, as you look at that data, campus principals then will develop strategies, and staffing is a part of that strategy to improve student outcomes and to align, you know, whatever budgetary allocations they make with the needs or the areas of need that have been identified in those conversations with the community, as well as any other stakeholder that we want to pull into that conversation. Again, we track that money to make sure that we do have a lens on equity and that the needs of our most marginalized students are impacted. And so those conversations constantly revolve around just looking at data and making sure that the resources, whether it's manpower or finances, are aligned with the areas of need that we identify.
Thank you so much. So for our last question for this session, I think we're all starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, maybe just a little bit in terms of the pandemic, and we're certainly all wondering what next school year is going to look like. So understanding that we must always be prepared to make changes or to pivot as needed, what can we expect for the conclusion of this school year and next school year? So Dr. Mays, I'll actually call on you again to talk a little bit about graduation.
Sure, and so graduation as well as prom are exciting times for our students, and we recognize that. And so we will be hosting our graduations at our stadiums. And so we will be outside where our students will be able to bring at least 4 guests to attend graduation. And again, we want to make sure that this is as close to the original experience as possible, but we know that during COVID that it isn't always possible. And so we'll be piping in music. We won't necessarily have our band there. But again, we'll be using our stadiums to try to get as many people into each one of those graduations as possible. And so we do have some staggering schedules that have been communicated through high school principals, and we want to make sure that we continue to share this information throughout our community. And so we're working on the same process for prom to try to make sure that we replicate as many of those senior rites of passage as possible as we try to wave goodbye to our seniors as they take that next step. And so we're excited about safely hosting graduation as well as prom within the next coming months.
That's great news. Thank you. And to close off the panel portion of today's event, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Elizalde to talk a little bit about potential hybrid and in-person models for next school year.
Thank you once again, Stephanie Elizalde with Austin ISD. I think there's so many questions that I wish we had specific answers to, but we're going to do our best given the information we have right now. I know that pivot has definitely been an overused word, to say the least, throughout this year, or flexibility. I definitely think we could put, I'm really going to date myself here, I think all of us could be, certainly all of you could easily be, we could put the image of Gumby and everybody would be all flexible, malleable, because that's what you've had to do all year long. And we know that that's been just a huge challenge. So we do know that at this point, we are planning for a more standard face-to-face instructional model for the coming school year. I've been asked questions, will we be requiring masks? We will, as long as the CDC says that that's what we should be doing, then yes, we will be doing so. So unless something like that were to change, I do not see a world right now where the beginning of 21-22 face-to-face would not have masks, because we know that our students, at least under age 16, still won't have had an option even to receive a vaccine. As quickly as they're rolling them out, it does seem like more of our high school students will have eligibility. Well, they all have eligibility. Right now, we're in that situation where the demand is now more than the supply, but they continue to bring the supply in. You know, in our offices right now, there's a line there. We filled every one of those 500 slots today for individuals to get the Johnson & Johnson that are employees of our district. And it was great to see all of our folks, you know, working to make sure that they are safe and that they can keep their families safe. That being said, I work really hard to make sure we work as a team, but this one I'm going to use the word I intentionally. I am committed to ensuring that our teachers are not expected nor required to do simultaneous concurrent teaching this next school year. So that's going to require our community to work with us if they choose to do virtual. I think there will be a need for some virtual instruction, possibly hybrid, possibly 100% virtual. I know parents want to know that as well, because they're like, well, I need to know the details before I can decide. Well, that is something that is so important that we have to have a community of our folks coming up with what that design looks like. And individual families will need to make a selection, at least for one semester, of whether they want to do the virtual portion, so that we can have those of you that are teachers dedicated just to being able to serve students who may be in a virtual setting. The idea of you having to do both is really just not a realistic expectation. And you all have done just heroic work being able to deal with that at this point. But that is something we absolutely have learned from, and we are committed to ensuring that that is not something that we do again. And lastly, those hybrid type models, we are going to, Dr. Mays and Ms. Casas will be working at the campus level to gather campus input. There have to be some components of the model that will be firm, and then there will be some components that need to be flexible. So working out how that will actualize itself really requires truly the embodiment of that term, people support what they help to create. And before we close this portion, I do want to thank you all. I know this has been, saying that this has been a tough year is an understatement. And I think it's added to the point that I couldn't get out and see individuals on the same level that I would have normally. And so I'm very thankful, and I appreciate the grace that you have shown me coming in, learning the community, learning each of you, learning our needs, learning your expectations so that I can meet those. And sometimes some of the information, this is the first time we're doing this, so we're going to get a lot of feedback about we should have, we could have, we will. And so we thank you all for being the inaugural group, and we're very open to feedback. We just really want to make sure that even when sometimes the information isn't always what we want to communicate, at a very minimum, we owe you the respect to give you that information and the rationale behind it. And so I always like to at least have, you all are inspiring with all of the work that you do every single day. And I think you all as educators, no matter what role you actually play, you exemplify the saying, we rise by lifting others. For you all are always lifting others, and we want to do everything we can to lift you up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde, and to all of our panelists today. We will spend the next several minutes now on a Q&A portion, and I will open up the floor, but I wanted to make sure first to get to some of the questions that I saw themes across in the registration. As you all know, we had prompted you to provide us questions in advance if you had them. So one theme that I saw quite a lot of was around the cultivation of Austin ISD's equity ecosystem. So I think, Dr. Hawley, I'd love if you could speak to some of the areas of improvement or plans that you see in focusing on that specifically for staff.
And at this time, let's switch to ASL Interpreter 1.
Stephanie Hawley, Equity Officer. One of the things that we're trying to do in the district is not separate equity. As Dr. Elizalde started off, it's the center of all of our work. And so the hope is that the work that needs to be done around equity, whether it's with special education, multilingual education, it's all in our district improvement plan. And so we're hoping not to silo equity, but to make it just a part of what we do. And that's going to take a little work to do. But our hope is everybody will start to do their work with an equity lens, and equity won't be something on the side. But we do know we have some challenges, again, with regards to special education, doing a better job, we know, in terms of literacy, as you heard Ms. Casas. But again, we want to make sure that's all in one plan, and it pushes all of us into equity, regardless of what our role is in the district. I hope I answered that question.
I think so. Thank you so much. The other theme that we saw a handful of questions about, asking various aspects about this. And so any member from the leadership team who feels that they have something to contribute to this, there were a lot of questions about summer school, about what it would look like, whether it be virtual or in person, about what kinds of things would be offered. So I open up the floor to anybody to answer that.
So I'm going to start off, and then I'll see if one of our other team members would like to add. This is another one of those where I promise you, if I could get the perfect answer so everybody would feel like, yes, exactly. The challenge with this particular issue is that we have folks that have a variety of different philosophies right now around summer school. One of those being that everyone is exhausted. And so the notion of we're going to do summer school, even in a virtual setting, for some folks, you know, it is that, whether you were a Stephen Covey fan or just the idea of self-care, that this is one of those moments where we actually need to ask ourselves that probably a very large percentage of our staff really needs a moment to be able to sharpen the saw or sharpen the axe, or reset or re-energize. And so after listening, and I do have something I probably failed to mention is earlier on, as I got here and I heard the need for a lot of conversation, which really doesn't seem to be as possible in this setting. We did create a teacher roundtable. I see at least one member of my teacher roundtable, Katie Howell, is there. And so, and then I also have a principal focus group. So with that, we're gonna only focus on our seniors, our high school students, and I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Mays there.
Thank you. And we have been focused on our transition grade levels. And so our seniors, our 8th graders, and our 5th graders, we are working really hard to support them. Given the circumstance, we are looking to support them in a virtual environment, but in any of the other grades, we are working directly with our campuses. I'm actually have been visiting campuses all day today, just kind of talking through some of the summer offerings that we may have for 5th graders that may not have failed, but that are looking for enrichment opportunities that are transitioning to 6th grade. Same thing with our high school students, you know, our 9th through our 11th graders, and trying to make sure that we can provide unique support and opportunities for enrichment for those students as well. And so again, I visited a couple of middle schools and high schools today just to kind of continue to have that conversation, but we absolutely have a plan in place to support those transition grades and trying to make sure that those students get over that transition hurdle. So look for more information from us that will be pushed out via our website around enrichment opportunities between our schools for students.
Oh gosh, what happened? Thank you so much. Now I would like to just open up the floor to any general questions from attendees that anybody might have. You can feel free to unmute yourself.
I just unmuted myself now. I tend to follow a lot of trends in national education, and something that I read in the Washington Post I found pretty intriguing. They were talking about how we can actually use remote learning now to provide access to classes that students didn't have before. For example, I'm a math teacher. I read an article in the Atlantic about Exeter and these elite boarding schools. And the one thing that I took from this is said, they teach multivariable calculus to seniors? That's what I took from it. So are we going to have ways to provide things like multivariable calculus, linear algebra, advanced statistics to students all across the district now?
I think that, I'm sorry, let me help our interpreters. This is Stephanie Elizalde again. I think what a great question to really push us into ensuring that we remove those barriers that are maybe thinking that either there aren't enough students for such a course, or whether we necessarily don't have that level of expertise in some of these areas. I know it will be something that we will be working in. I don't know that we'll be able, as you probably already suspected, we won't be able to do this just as a quick turnaround. We'll have to get those courses, of course, started first. I mean, the first thing is we know we have some schools, for instance, that aren't even able to offer, let's say, certain AP courses. Well, why not? Why can't we digitally, virtually utilize, let's say, if you're teaching, for instance, calculus BC at a school, and we have 4 students at another school, well, isn't there a way for us to connect those pieces? I think that's one of the more easier ways. With that, I think I'll stop, because otherwise I'll go on for like an hour.
I am satisfied to know that people are thinking about this. One of my dreams is to bring parametric equations to everyone, but we're a long ways away from that dream.
Mr. Tito, I'm actually over at Anderson High School right now, and we had that conversation this evening as we walked some of the classrooms, and we're talking about some of the opportunities as we want to leverage this virtual environment to maximize the potential of some of the opportunities. But we also know that, face-to-face instruction works best for, most of our students. And so we want to make sure that we strike a good balance between our offerings, but we are definitely having those conversations. And like I said, I'm having fun over here at Anderson, just learning and thinking about some of those opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question.
I have a question.
I have a question.
Yeah, whoever, I think, yeah, go ahead.
So, I know as an orchestra director,
I think you're having connectivity issues, maybe. I'm not sure if it's just on my end, but I'm hearing a lot of breaking up.
This is Meredith McCallman. I'm an orchestra director, and just I know there's definitely some concern among those of us who do the performing arts electives.
Meredith, do you mind typing your question into the chat, please? Yeah, we're having some connectivity
I
issues.
don't know what to do. So
would you mind please typing your question into the chat?
To a different laptop, but then it probably will be too late. So
would you mind typing your question into the chat?
I think the question she was asking if I caught just a key component. I think I heard something about fine arts. And since I've gotten a couple of emails, I'm gonna just take a leap here and kind of think I might know what this has something to do with. So first and foremost, we are not cutting programs. We are not cutting programs. There are some adjustments that are being made just with regard to some of the supporting staff that may exist. I don't want to take away individual principals' ability to make certain decisions on their campuses, and each principal will be working on those decisions at their campus. What I do want to remind everyone is this first level of staffing was what we'll call foundational staffing. So in other words, it's to ensure that we do two things: utilizing an equity lens with economically disadvantaged students being one of the proxies that we use, so that we can begin to create some sense of where there is greater need, that we would provide greater staffing. The second level of staffing adjustments after that foundational piece will be programmatic. So whether that's fine arts, whether that's bilingual education, whether that's Spanish immersion, whether that's early college, high school, whether that's band, whether that's whatever those things are at each individual campus, we will then be working to see, did the foundational process meet the needs of the campus? If it did not, then the principal will work with their executive director and Dr. Mays and Leslie Stevens in human capital, and they will work towards ensuring that we have the same quality of programs that we have had prior to COVID. We are committed. And just a side note, albeit 50 pounds ago, I actually did study ballet for 16 years. And so flamenco as well. And I took drama and theater arts in high school. So I just want to use that to be to the point that fine arts is really near and dear to my heart. It is just like sports, it is a component that connects to academic learning. It is academic learning in a different way. And so whether we're trying to get to calculus or whether we're doing advanced bio, or whether we're doing physics, or whether we're doing English, all of those things are connected in some form or fashion to music, arts, sports, and so on. So please work with your campus principal first. And then if you do not feel like that has been resolved, or that you feel that the program is absolutely being negatively affected, then I would ask you to reach out to your executive director. And then ultimately that executive director can either reach out to an associate superintendent and ultimately Dr. Mays. Would that be the recommendation, sir?
Yes, and I was going to actually ditto the same thing, Dr. Elizalde. We have a bunch of capable principals on this screen. I'm looking at their faces now, and they are more than happy to support you all as we all work creatively to meet the needs of campuses. I think we all want, the needs of our students to be met. And we're all working to move in that direction. And so it starts with you all sharing that feedback with the principals. So as I talked about that process earlier, that feedback can be a part of the process as we go and allocate resources.
I love it. Thank you so much, y'all. We have time for one more question, and I believe somebody had started asking one when we started this question, so I'd love for them to get a chance to.
Okay, hi. I might need to take a couple of breaths. Sorry, thank you. First of all, my question is not as amazing as Mr. Tedder's. And on Miss McCallum, Miss Meredith McCallum's question on fine arts. Because I think all of that is amazing, and I hope that we can all try to integrate all of those amazing components. This is a question that my juniors and seniors have really wanted me to ask. And although I've been trying very hard to get them to advocate for themselves, we're still working on that. I wanted to ask for them. So you might giggle. And Miss Steele, you can hold me accountable and we can have a chat after this. But I promise it's genuine and it's coming from my juniors and seniors. They really want to know if there's any way this summer, whether it's outdoor and with masks, grown-up permission slips, if they can have some sort of prom. And I don't know how we can make that happen. And I know that takes a lot of energy and work and time. And I know that we're all kind of running thin. But I'm willing to help problem solve and figure that out, and also ensure that our kids and our families and communities are being safe as well. So, thank you.
So, Ms. Rickard, we actually are hosting proms, and so some of them will be a combination of inside, outside proms. We are working to make sure that students get a chance to have those rites of passage as they transition, from our space right here within this wonderful Austin ISD community out into the world. And so we are communicating with our principals. Our principals are working on those processes. We'll be sending out, more public communication, just generally to the general public, but they'll be able to bring their dates and have that dance. We are in, I believe, are we in stage 3? So we're working to do all of this safely. And so they'll have prepackaged food. We'll have some social distancing measures. We'll have some pods where we want people to move around, but again, we'll be able to host prom and they'll be able to hopefully have that milestone in their life.
Thank you so much for that question. And thank you, Dr. Mays, for that answer. And thank you everybody for joining us today, and to our panelists. We do have a session right after this that is for the same vertical team for families and community members. I shared that information in the chat. If anybody joined this one late and missed the beginning of the presentation or would like to stay on, we will be switching over to that now. Just as a couple reminders, if we did not get to your question, please feel free to email me. I just shared my email in the chat. It's gabriella.becker@austinisd.org. And we will make sure that those questions get answered. And we will also this event has been recorded and we will be uploading it at a later date if anybody missed it and would like to watch it. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time and for everything that you do for us at Austin ISD.